Hi, everyone. Welcome to the It Hurts to Mom podcast. I'm Lauren Rose, and today's guest is Alison Coates. Alison is a teacher who started a charity after her husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or MS. Welcome, Alison. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your family's experience with chronic illness.
Oh gosh, there's quite a lot.
Okay.
My husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2011. And around the same time that he was being diagnosed with that, my eldest daughter was also having a number of health problems, and it was quite a difficult diagnosis for her as well, because it's quite an unusual condition that she has. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's to do with connective tissue, and POTS syndrome, which is postural orthotic tachycardic syndrome. I think I got that right. So she was diagnosed with that around the same sort of time, which was quite debilitating. That actually put her in bed for almost a year. She was pretty much bedridden with that at sort of 19, 20. And then our youngest daughter, again, around a similar sort of time, she was diagnosed with autism. So we had a lot kind of to deal with, and a lot kind of going on all at the same time. So yeah, we've had our fair share, I think, of chronic illnesses, neurological conditions, you name it.
Yeah, that's a lot to be happening all at the same time, or even not at the same time. That's still a lot. What's it like living with and loving a family who has illnesses?
Challenging, definitely challenging, but I would say in a lot of ways it's made us all a lot closer. I would say particularly with my eldest daughter, she's such a strong character, because she's had to face so much in the way of pain and mobility issues and so on. And of course my husband as well, he's not so much had the pain, he's been lucky in that respect, but certainly the mobility issues and various other symptoms that come with MS. So from sort of my perspective as an outsider looking in, I'm kind of in awe of them and what they're achieving and what they're having to deal with on a daily basis. But I think sort of in terms of they're knowing how much I'm there for them and supporting them as well, it's definitely brought us all closer, I would say.
That's really good, because I mean, it can do one of two things. It can bring you closer, or it can spread you farther apart, because
It really can. Yeah.
Really difficult situations. What do you think is the most challenging part of being an outsider looking in and having a family with illnesses?
It's definitely not being able to take it away from them, because that's sort of, as a mother, as a partner, you don't want to see a loved one going through that. And if you could take it away from them and be the one that's dealing with that, you would do that in a heartbeat rather than have them suffering with it. So yeah, that's the hardest thing, definitely. And I think as well as that, which kind of links into our charity and what we do, I think we've definitely experienced our fair share of medical gaslighting as well, dare I say. So yeah, so that's been really hard, sort of knowing that you have some answers because it's your body, or your family's body, and sort of being told by people that are not specialists that it's not this or it's not that, and then finally when the diagnosis comes up, you're saying, well, I told you so, did tell you this sort of however many years ago. So that's been very frustrating as well, but yeah, we're trying to address that with what we've been doing with the charity.
That's good. So have you ever had an experience with a doctor or medical professional basically writing off the symptoms and saying that it's not a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, we had that with my daughter, definitely, because she'd had a number of, I suppose, red flags from when she was around about 12 or 13. She suddenly started having various problems. It started with seizures, and then the seizures stopped when she was in her late teens, early 20s, and they kind of gave way to this debilitating gastric pains, problems with her legs, the mobility issues, all kinds of different things. And I love reading and researching, so that's what I will do, but proper research, you know, really reading the papers and speaking to experts and that kind of thing. Did lots and lots of research and thought, this is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because my daughter even has the characteristics, facial features of that. You know, I looked at a picture of a child with this and thought, oh, that could be a child related to my daughter. So we sort of went down that route, and it just ticked all of the boxes. And I remember taking Rebecca to the doctor and saying, I think this is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And the doctor sort of giving me a strange look. And many years later, we got Rebecca's notes from the doctor, and the comment was, you know, mother thinks that it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it was really very dismissive. But when Becky was diagnosed with that doctor did everything she could, because she knew we'd been right all along, and so she really did help after that, to be fair. But yeah, we've had other doctors that have not been quite as willing to admit that they were wrong, but yeah, we don't give up, so you know, just keep going.
But do you have to see different doctors to replace the ones that aren't taking you seriously?
Yeah, I mean, this certainly, again, with my daughter, at one point she was under a pain specialist who really did not have any experience of her particular condition, and so was trying to treat her, and really got to the point where he'd run out of everything that he was willing to try for her, at which point he asked her if she had tried self-harming. I'm not even kidding. He actually suggested self-harming, and it was on the one appointment where she didn't have somebody with her and she hadn't recorded the conversation, and she just sort of came out in shock and then in tears, couldn't quite believe what she'd been told. So of course we followed that one up, and we switched her to a different doctor. We got an apology, got a promise he would never do that again to another child, and she switched to a doctor that really had a very good experience of her particular condition, who got her straight on the right medication that helped her. So yeah, that's it. I think it's taught us that when you know what the condition is, research it, find the best doctors, find the specialists that know what they're talking about, and approach them. And that's exactly what we did with my husband as well, with the MS.
What in the world was self-harming supposed to do to help her?
Isn't that crazy? I know. We couldn't believe it, and he tried to sort of talk his way out of it and say, you know, well, I was just checking to see. And we said, no, that isn't what happened. It wasn't the way that it was phrased. So I think he got a slap on his wrist, but not appropriate. And I think from her perspective as well, because she's a strong young woman, really strong young woman, but she felt concerned that he might do this to somebody else, or say this to somebody else who wasn't as strong, who would then maybe go away and think this is worth trying. So it was really important for us that we got that shut down.
Yeah, I'm really glad you followed up with that, because I mean, that is literally the craziest thing I've ever heard that a doctor has said, without a doubt. Absolutely. The most insane.
Yes, absolutely crazy. Yeah.
My goodness. How do you balance your own needs with those of your family? Because you've got a lot to deal with.
I've got quite a small circle of really good friends that I trust, you know, that I've known for decades. And so I make sure that I spend time with them. I make sure that I do things that support me. So I meditate. I have my own sort of toolkit of things that help me to function as well. I love cooking. I cook as well. And my husband and I, we really like to travel. And he's doing really well. He does have certain issues and mobility problems and that kind of thing, but it doesn't stop him from traveling, doesn't stop us from enjoying ourselves. So I think when you're confronted with chronic conditions, we also lost his parents to cancer within a really short space of time as well. What it teaches you is that life is extremely short and you do not know what's around the corner. And so we try and focus on experiences, and we try and focus on things that are going to bring memories, rather than, let's have a flashy car, or, it's not about possessions and so on. It's about the experiences. So we do a lot.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it sounds like you have your own forms of self-care. So you're taking care of yourself so that you can best take care of them too.
You have to. Yeah, you have to. It's like the thing when you're on an airplane, isn't it? You need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help anyone else. And it's definitely true. I think when you're in that kind of situation where you're the one that's able-bodied, you've got to make sure that you do look after yourself, because otherwise what's going to happen? Going to be in a mess.
Yeah, I can just see somebody in your position neglecting themselves because they have so much to deal with. So I'm really proud of you. I'm glad that you're doing that.
Thank you. I've had my issues as well. I'm somebody that suffers from anxiety, and I have done for as long as I can remember. But I've got that managed now. And when I've had situations that have really triggered that, and I would say the last one was probably about 4 years ago, something like that. It comes as a learning experience to me, and I'll say, right, I'm not going to put myself in that position again. That's not going to happen. And if I get those warning signs, I will walk away from that situation. So it's, yeah, you've got to be aware of it.
Yeah, I suffer from terrible anxiety too, but I do not have it under control. So
Oh gosh, it's so
really
important. Yeah.
yeah, I'm really impressed by you. So you talked about a few things that you've learned. So, doing the research and going to the doctors with, you know, evidence-based research and information and what you think it is. You've talked about living experiences instead of worrying about possessions, because life is precious. Are there any other big lessons that you can think of that you've learned in this journey?
Oh, big life lessons. Well, I think not being afraid to speak up for yourself, or to speak up if it's an important issue. So I would say that I pick my battles a lot more carefully now. So if I want to sort of get into a fight about something, it needs to be something that's going to benefit other people ultimately, not just something that I'm going to benefit from. So yeah, picking your battles, I think, is an important one, and not being afraid to speak up, to self-advocate, and to encourage other people to self-advocate as well, because doctors don't always know best. Sometimes they do, but ultimately nobody has the vested interest that you have in your health other than you. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a big lesson.
Yeah, one thing that I've learned in my lifetime with, chronic illness and pain is nobody's going to take care of me except for me. If I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it.
Exactly. Nobody has the same interest in you. You could have the best doctor in the world, but they've not got the same interest in you that you have got in you. It's your life, isn't it? So yes. I think that's really important, is that if you feel really strongly about something, that you should speak up for that, because it's your life and your choice at the end of the day. So we're very very much in favor of people using their voice and getting a choice. Right.
Absolutely. And nobody knows your body. Nobody knows your body better than you do. You know
Exactly.
what's normal for you. You know what's changed. And, getting dismissed by doctors is not okay, but I know it happens all the time. So definitely advocate for yourself, because who else is going to do it? Nobody.
How many times do we read terrible stories of people that knew that there was something wrong, they had a niggling feeling, and they kept going to the doctor, and the doctor kept dismissing them, and then ultimately it was something terrible that could have been avoided. And you've just got to listen to that inner voice, and you've got to listen to your own intuition and not be fobbed off. That's really important.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us about the charity that you started? Tell us all about it.
So the charity came about around about 6 years ago. So after all of the research around multiple sclerosis, because when James was diagnosed, he was diagnosed with the progressive kind. So he was transitioning between relapsing remitting, which is how most people start, not all people, and secondary progressive. So he was sort of at that halfway point between the two, and he was going downhill really, really quickly. So it felt like there were new symptoms almost every week, and it was really, really frightening. So with it being progressive MS, there really was nothing available at the time. So it was a case of complementary therapies, holistic therapies. So we were doing things like Tai Chi, we were looking at diet, we were anything and everything that you can think of, Reiki, anything that might help him in some way. And I would say that a lot of the things did help in terms of sort of lifestyle changes, but they didn't stop him from progressing. And then I heard about HSCT, which is a bone marrow transplant. And I read that this was a treatment that had been used for over 20 years for people with MS, and that it was a very serious procedure, but that in most cases it halted people's progression. So I couldn't get enough information about this. I just kept reading and reading and reading and speaking to whoever I could and reading the research papers and so on. And I said, this looks like it could be a possibility. What do we think about this? So we spoke to his neurologist, who said, how do you spell hematopoietic stem cell transplant? So that was kind of the worst, that was the first red flag. And what we found out very quickly after that was that although MS patients are under a neurologist is not a specialist when it comes to a bone marrow transplant, a hematologist is. So it's the hematologists that were carrying out this procedure and seeing the benefits, and the neurologists really were none the wiser and didn't know enough about it. And neurologists often are quite risk averse, so they would rather start you on something that's pretty inoffensive and then sort of step it up if they need to. They don't want to start with something like chemotherapy because that's a big risk. Anyway, we managed to get a referral to the top specialist hematologist in the country and one of the neurologists who did have experience. And we went to see them. And to cut a long story short, because there was a lot of toing and froing and rejections and having to appeal and so on, ultimately he got a transplant 7 years ago. In fact, it's 7 years ago this month. Wow. Well, he was extremely fortunate because he was one of the ones for whom the progression stopped. So he hasn't got any worse in 7 years, which is just incredible. We've often said that if we'd have won the lottery, we couldn't have felt any luckier than we did with his getting this treatment. So he saw a number of improvements as well, but the goal of this treatment is to stop the progression, stop you getting any worse, stop you getting into a wheelchair if that's sort of the path that you're on, and possibly worse with a disease like MS. So yeah, so that's exactly what it did. And about a year after that, when he was in recovery, we said, we need to give something back here. We need to help other people to access this treatment, to get the right information, because the neurologists don't seem to be sharing that information. We need to get that information out there to people so that they can make an informed choice about what's right for them. And so that was where the charity started. So we are run by, I'm the only one on the board that doesn't have MS. We are a peer-led charity. We're run entirely by volunteers. And yeah, we've grown and grown. We're still a little charity, but we've worked now with the MS Society. They've asked us to sort of work with them on their information on their website. What is the message you were giving out? Is it accurate? How do we need to phrase this? So that was really nice. We work with the NHS to support them with any trials around this treatment. We're doing that as well. We provide a peer support free call service where people can ring and speak to one of our veterans who's had the treatment and get support that way, get answers to questions. And we also provide grants, because a lot of people are still having to go overseas for this treatment, and it can be really, really expensive. So we can't pay for the whole treatment because there are so many hoops you've got to jump through as a charity. Can't pay for the treatment, but we can help them with travel expenses. So that's what we do. So we've helped people with grants we've helped about 50 people in 5 years with grants of up to about £1,000. And we have we've probably helped a couple of hundred on the phone lines, and then a lot more sort of more informally than that as well. So yeah, we're definitely making our mark and making our voices heard, and helping people, which is the main thing.
What's your charity called?
So it's called AIMS, AIMS, which stands for Autoimmune and Multiple Sclerosis. So the reason we've got autoimmune in there as well is because HSCT can help with any hematologically rooted autoimmune disease. So there are a number of diseases that this treatment is used for. Our focus is primarily on MS, because that seems to be the one that is most common, that people will use the treatment for. Yeah. So
Okay.
we have a website, which is www.aimscharity.org, and you can find out everything about us on there, lots of information on there.
Awesome. And tell us about that cookbook of yours.
Oh, the cookbook. Yeah. So this is this has been my my labor of love for many years. So when James had his transplant, he was advised to follow what's called a neutropenic diet for 6 months. And that's because your body, what they do is they wipe out your immune system with HSCT, and then you regrow a brand new baby immune system. So it's a lot like being a newborn baby in terms of what you can and can't eat. So just as you wouldn't feed a baby honey, and there are various other things you wouldn't feed a baby, what this diet does is it just reduces the risk of food poisoning. That's all that it does, until your immune system has recovered and restarted itself enough to be able to have its own defenses and again. So when this started, I was looking for recipes because I love cooking, really enjoy cooking, and I tried to find some recipe books that would be suitable. Couldn't find anything that was really substantial enough or really tick the boxes that I wanted. So I started a group on Facebook, and really with a view to sharing ideas and sharing recipes and that kind of thing. And it sort of, it grew into a bit of a monster. and I don't know what happened, but at some point I said, I'm going to write a recipe book at some point, and then we'll have this. And so it took me the best part of 6 years to write the recipe book, but I finally got it finished this year. So what it is really is it's family recipes that we've enjoyed for many years that have been adapted to take out any risky foods. So that would be things like rare meat, raw eggs, raw fish, freshly ground black pepper is another one, salad vegetables, fresh fruit, lots of things like that. Really, the main principles are it needs to be cooked really well, because that's going to destroy any pathogens and so on. So it's full of I would say comfort food, because that's our style of food. We love home cooked comfort food. I definitely come from a family of foodies. James's mum was a great cook as well. So so that's kind of where the book, the idea came from. So it also talks about HSCT, what that is, multiple sclerosis, and then it's got over 100 dinner recipes that people can use safely, knowing that it's not a food poisoning risk, because there are many risks, I think, after you've had HSCT or chemotherapy. So it would be suitable for somebody that had chemo for cancer as well. Anybody that's got a low immune system. There are lots of different risks, but this sort of takes the risk out of the food element of it. And I've been lucky enough for the world's top doctors for HSCT, for MS, have endorsed the book and given me some really positive feedback, which is really nice as well. And what I've also done with this book, because my daughter Rebecca, who has the Ehlers-Danlos, found out quite quickly that changing to a gluten-free diet really benefited her. So I got used to cooking gluten-free. So a lot of the recipes are either gluten-free, or they've got suggestions of how you can make them gluten-free, or how you can make them vegan or vegetarian, or whatever you want to do. So there's definitely something for everybody in there. And the idea is that even after you've finished the treatment and eating in this particular way, you'd still be able to use these recipes. That's the whole point, is that it's it's not a diet book as such. It's something that you can enjoy with the family.
Right, so it's called the Neutropenic Cookbook.
It's called the Neutropenic Cookbook. Yeah, and it's available on Amazon, and it's also available on the AIMS website as well. And a percentage of all the profits go back into AIMS as well to support the peer support the peer support call service that we offer. So yeah, it's a labor of love, definitely.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool, and I love that it's connected back to your charity too. But that charity seems like a really great thing that you're doing. I mean, 50 people is a lot for something as serious as a transfusion.
Yeah, and I mean those are the ones that we've helped with the travel grants. So we're a small UK charity. So in terms of the travel grants, we help UK residents, but UK residents who are having a transplant either in the UK or going overseas to Mexico to have it. So we will Russia as well, but Russia with the current situation, that's been a bit more difficult because of government recommendations on travel and so on. But we do support that particular hospital. But in terms of the peer support that we offer, we speak to people from all over the world. So if you've got anybody who happens to be watching this, who has MS or knows somebody with MS who would like to speak to us, get on the website and make an appointment with us, because we're really happy to speak to everybody from all over the world and support you and answer your questions.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you said you've talked to hundreds of people and just answered their questions and helped them with the peer support. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, it's about paying it forward. That's what it comes down to for us, because we just feel so grateful with the support that we received and the help that he's got and is still benefiting from it, that we want everybody that would be suitable for this treatment. And it isn't suitable for absolutely everybody, but that's for the doctors to determine. We want people to at least know about it and to be able to find out if it is something that's suitable for them.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been delightful.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so make sure to go to aimscharity.org for all this information. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any health, parenting, or life advice. For my freebie 30 ways to relieve pain without taking a pill, go to ithurtstomom.com/tips. If you have any comments, suggestions, or want to be on this podcast, please email me at ithurtstomom@gmail.com. I wish everybody a blessed and pain-free day. Bye.